They tried to frame me for theft at work, so I turned their trap into their downfall. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to post something like this, but here I am. For context, I work in the inventory and logistics department of a mid-sized tech supply company. I've been there for over 4 years, and up until a few months ago, I thought I was well liked. I show up on time, do more than I'm asked, and never stirred drama. But I guess that doesn't protect you when people get greedy. It started when a few high-end tablets went missing from one of our shipments. We handle a lot of stock, so accidents and miscounts happen occasionally. But this time, it was different. Our supervisor, Ron, was acting strange, more jumpy, more aggressive. Then, suddenly, HR called me in and said there was a formal report accusing me of stealing the tablets. I was floored. I've never even taken a pen home from work, let alone expensive tech. But they were serious. They even pulled up inventory records that had been tampered with to make it look like I was the last one handling that shipment. I tried to explain that something wasn't right, but they just said they'd be launching a full investigation. Until then, I was on unpaid leave. I left the office feeling numb. On my way out, one of the warehouse guys, Tony, gave me a weird look. Not sympathy, not confusion, just this smirk like he knew something I didn't. That's when things clicked. Ron had recently hired his cousin, Matt, and both had been unusually buddy-buddy with Tony lately. Something was off. I spent the next few days combing through every record I could access from home. Email chains, shift schedules, surveillance blind spots, everything. I even contacted a friend of mine who used to work in IT, and he agreed to help me out. We weren't sure what we were looking for exactly, but I was determined to prove I wasn't the one behind this. Then, almost by accident, I found something. One of our internal cameras near the loading dock had a slight lag in the cloud feed, meaning the live version saved differently than the synced copy in the main system. I managed to get a hold of an earlier version through my friend's old admin login, and what I saw made my blood run cold. It was Matt, Ron's cousin, stuffing 2 sealed boxes under a tarp in the back of Ron's car while Ron stood watch. The timestamp was the same day the tablets supposedly went missing. I didn't tell anyone yet. I wanted to gather more, something airtight. Because I knew if I played my cards right, I could not only clear my name, I could burn the entire lie to the ground. Update 2. I kept that footage saved in 3 different places, one on a USB, one on cloud backup, and one emailed to myself with a private note. I wasn't taking chances. But I also knew I couldn't just walk into HR and wave a video around. Ron was close with upper management, and if he'd gone this far to frame me, he probably had more people in his pocket than I realized, so I played it slow. My next step was figuring out how Matt got into the inventory system to tweak the records. Normally only a handful of people had login access that deep, and I wasn't one of them. I reached out to my friend again, the IT guy, and asked him if he could trace logins or detect unusual access. After a day of digging, he found a trail. Matt had used Ron's credentials from Ron's office computer late one evening when Ron had supposedly left early for a dentist appointment. Not only that, but the system noted a USB device had been plugged in around that same time, a device used to manually input override commands. It was sloppy, amateur. And now, I had proof that the footage and the record tampering were linked to them. Meanwhile, I pretended to stay low. I sent polite check-in emails to HR, asking if there were updates. They responded coldly, saying the investigation was still ongoing. I knew they had no intention of looking into Ron or Matt unless I forced their hand, so I did. I anonymously mailed a copy of the footage, a printed trail of the computer access logs, and a note saying, "You're accusing the wrong person," to the regional manager, someone higher up than Ron and outside our building's drama. I also sent a second copy to the company's ethics hotline with a formal whistleblower report. All under an alias. And I waited. Exactly 4 days later, I got a call from HR. Their tone was very different this time. They asked me to come in for a discussion, not an interrogation. When I arrived, they didn't waste time. The regional manager herself was in the room, along with 2 HR reps. They had reviewed everything. Ron had been suspended pending further investigation. Matt was no longer with the company. And as for me, they quietly said they'd like me to return to work immediately, with full back pay for the missed days, plus an internal apology from the company. They were obviously trying to avoid a lawsuit. But I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. I told them I'd think about it. Because now I had power, and a lot of eyes were suddenly watching very closely. Update 3. They wanted to make things right with a back pay check and a weak apology, but I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. Ron and Matt didn't just try to get me fired, they tried to destroy my reputation. If I hadn't been smart enough to get that footage, I'd be unemployed, humiliated, and possibly blacklisted in my field. I went back to work the next Monday. Most people in the office didn't know what had happened, just that Matt was suddenly gone and Ron hadn't been seen since. But I noticed something else. People were cautious around me now. Not in a bad way, but like they suddenly realized I wasn't someone to be stepped on. That maybe, I had more pull than they thought. A few days later, the regional manager called me again. This time, she wanted to know if I'd be willing to take over Ron's position, on a trial basis. Apparently, his extended absence might become permanent. I didn't even hesitate. I accepted. That's when everything changed. Being in management gave me access to things I didn't have before: records, emails, company communication channels. And what I found confirmed something I'd suspected. Ron and Matt weren't acting alone. A small circle of people had been helping them fudge numbers and cover up other incidents in exchange for favors and promotions. I compiled everything. It took weeks, but I gathered enough evidence to submit another anonymous report, this time directly to the board. I didn't include my name, but I left enough trail that they'd know exactly who dug it up. A month later, a major audit was announced. Several people were fired, demoted, or transferred. The whole place got shaken up. And me? I got promoted again. I never thought a single video recording and a little patience would change my whole life, but here I am, managing the same department where I was once framed and nearly fired. I'm still building, still learning, and still watching my back, but at least now I know that when people try to burn me down, I can rise from it stronger. To all the strangers here who read this, thank you. What do you think? Tell us in the comments. Like the video and hit the subscribe button for more Reddit stories.